Suzhou, Jiangsu Province, August 30th, 2017. In a narrow residential block tucked deep inside Gusu district, the morning air felt heavy long before anyone understood why. The building itself was forgettable. 4 floors, aging white paint turning the color of damp paper, rust creeping along the metal railings. It was the kind of place people moved into quietly and left without notice. Migrant workers, temporary lives, small rooms under 40 square meters, thin walls, shared silence. No one there expected history to happen. At around 8 in the morning, a middle-aged landlady named Mrs. Yang walked into the local police station. She did not report a murder. She did not report blood. She did not even report violence. She reported a missing tenant. The woman's name was Hu Yuduan, 29 years old. Rented a small unit on the lower floor. According to Mrs. Yang, the tenant had not paid rent for 2 months. Her phone had been unreachable since mid-May. At first, Mrs. Yang assumed what landlords often assume. The girl had left without settling debts. But 3 months had passed. The furniture remained, clothes remained, shoes by the door. And inside the bedroom stood a tall, built-in wardrobe. 4 white doors sealed carefully along the edges with strips of white tape. That was new. Mrs. Yang had not opened it. She told officers she felt something was wrong, not because of money, but because of the silence. Police contacted Hu Yuduan's husband in Jiangxi province. He confirmed he had not heard from her in months. He believed she was working in Jiangsu. They lived separately. He did not know the details of her daily life. The next morning, officers returned to the rental unit with the husband present. The hallway smelled faintly of moisture and cooking oil, ordinary for the building. The apartment door opened without force. Inside, the room looked lived in but undisturbed. A single bed against the wall, a small table, a kitchenette beyond a sliding partition. Nothing overturned, nothing dramatic, except the wardrobe. It was nearly 2.5 meters tall, just under a meter wide. The white paint had dulled with time, and along the seams of the doors, white adhesive tape had been pressed firmly into the cracks, sealing them shut as if someone wanted to prevent something from escaping. The new tenant, a 24-year-old woman who had moved in weeks earlier, stood nearby. She admitted she had noticed a strange odor occasionally, but the property agent told her the wardrobe contained the former tenant's belongings and should not be opened. She had accepted the explanation. She slept less than a meter away from it every night. Now, under police supervision, the husband stepped forward. He began peeling the tape away. The sound was dry and deliberate, adhesive lifting from wood, strip by strip. Each pull echoed louder than it should have in such a small room. When the doors finally opened, the interior did not reveal 4 separate compartments as expected. Instead, it was one hollow space packed tightly with clothing, blankets, plastic bags, scattered bowls, discarded shoes, clutter compressed unnaturally into a single cavity. No one knew what they were looking for. Perhaps documents, a phone, proof she had left willingly. The husband reached in to move aside a pile of fabric. Then he stopped. He withdrew his hand slowly, his face drained of color. He said he had touched something that felt like hair. The room went still. An officer wearing gloves stepped forward and lifted one of the blankets carefully. Beneath it lay a tightly wrapped cylindrical shape, layered in black plastic at both ends, bound with transparent tape, compressed into form. There is a moment in investigations when everyone present already knows what they are about to confirm. The object was carried outside. Layer by layer, tape was cut. Blankets peeled back. The late summer humidity pressed down on the small courtyard as officers worked in silence. Dark strands of dyed brown hair appeared first. Inside the wrapping was the body of a young woman. Forensic examination would later determine she had been deceased for approximately 3 months. Cause of death, sharp force injuries resulting in acute blood loss. Identity confirmed through DNA, Hu Yuduan. But in that first hour, none of the technical language mattered. What mattered was proximity. For more than 100 days, this apartment had not been empty. A new tenant had moved in. She cleaned. She opened windows. She cooked meals. She slept at night, breathing the same air, separated from the concealed body by a thin wooden panel. No one heard a scream. No one asked enough questions. And if the husband's fingers had not brushed against a strand of hair that morning, The wardrobe might have remained sealed longer still. The scene did not look like chaos. It looked controlled. The tape had been applied methodically along every seam, the body wrapped with deliberate care. The dishes inside the wardrobe suggested something hurried, yet strangely composed. This was not abandonment. This was concealment. Outside, neighbors gathered quietly along the corridor, whispering into phones. Word traveled quickly through the building. A body had been found inside a wardrobe, but the most unsettling detail would take longer to understand. The killer had not attempted to remove the body from the apartment. Instead, they had chosen to live with it, at least long enough to make it disappear into the architecture of the room. By midday, the unit was sealed as a crime scene. Officers began cataloging items. The wardrobe doors stood open now, stripped of tape, exposing the hollow interior that had held its secret through an entire summer. At that point, there was no suspect, only a dead woman in a rented room, and a question hanging heavier than the August air. Who was the last person to see Hu Yuduan alive? And why did they believe a few strips of tape would be enough to keep her hidden? Before investigators could understand who killed her, they needed to understand who she was. Hu Yuduan was 29 years old, born in Shangrao, Jiangxi province, married. But in Suzhou, she lived as if she were not. There are cities where reinvention is easy. Suzhou, with its factories, rental blocks, and nightlife districts, allows people to edit themselves. Backgrounds become vague. Marriages become distant. Names remain, but context fades. In the small apartment in Gusu district, Hu Yuduan existed between two lives. To her husband back in Jiangxi, she was a wife working away from home. To her neighbors in Suzhou, she was a young woman living alone. To the men who came and went from her apartment, she was something else entirely. She worked nights at a local bar, not a high-end lounge, but a dimly lit venue where music was loud enough to blur conversations and alcohol softened edges. Colleagues later described her as quiet at first glance. Not the loudest in the room, not flamboyant, but attentive. She knew when to laugh softly, when to lower her voice, when to lean closer. She understood the rhythm of male attention, when to reward it, when to withhold it. Her phone records told a story more clearly than any coworker could. Dozens of male contacts, transfers of money, messages ranging from affectionate to possessive. Some asked where she was, some accused her of ignoring them, some sent screenshots of bank transfers as proof of loyalty. The sums were not extravagant, but they were consistent. 3,000 RMB here, a gift there, a promise of a handbag, a dinner paid for. It was not unusual in that environment. Relationships blurred between romance and arrangement, emotional validation intertwined with financial support. But the structure was fragile. Hu Yuduan's lifestyle required more than her base salary at the bar could provide. Designer bags, new clothes, occasional upscale meals. She did not live extravagantly, but she lived above what her fixed income allowed. And so her emotional world became layered. Neighbors noticed that men visited frequently. Some older, well-dressed, arriving in polished cars. Others younger, speaking softly, staying longer. One evening, months before her disappearance, voices escalated into the hallway. An older man in his 60s argued loudly outside her door. Witnesses later recalled fragments, complaints about money, accusations of unfair treatment, anger about time spent with others. Hu Yuduan reportedly pushed him away and told him not to return if he could not meet her expectations. The building returned to silence after that night, but patterns remained. In many true crime cases, the victim's life appears straightforward until tragedy reframes it. Here, complexity was visible long before the crime. She was not isolated. She was not socially invisible. And yet, when she vanished in mid-May 2017, no one reported her missing. Not the older sponsor, not the younger men messaging her late at night, not co-workers at the bar. They assumed she had quit or found another job. Even the man who considered himself her official boyfriend did not contact authorities. Her last confirmed outgoing message was sent on the morning of May 16th. After that, silence. Her phone stopped responding, her social accounts inactive, payments halted. In a world of constant messaging, silence should stand out. But in transient urban spaces, disappearance often looks like relocation. Landlords assume debt avoidance. Employers assume job change. Romantic partners assume emotional distance. No one assumes death inside a wardrobe. When investigators reconstructed her life, they found no record of long-term abuse reports, no official complaints, no restraining orders, no visible bruises noted by colleagues before her disappearance. What they found instead was emotional fragmentation. She maintained different versions of herself for different audiences. To one man, she spoke about a future together. To another, she hinted at financial struggle. To co-workers, she mentioned a boyfriend but avoided details. To her husband, she remained geographically distant but legally bound. This was not uncommon in the nightlife economy, but it created a volatile ecosystem. Money was exchanged for affection. Affection implied exclusivity. Exclusivity clashed with reality. The men in her life did not occupy separate lanes. They overlapped, and overlap creates friction. In interviews, one colleague described her with a sentence investigators later revisited several times. She was good at making men feel chosen. Chosen even when they were not. The danger in that dynamic is subtle. It builds quietly. It rarely explodes publicly until one participant feels exposed. By the time Hu Yuduan's body was discovered in August, detectives were not just asking who had access to her apartment, they were asking which of these men believed they had something to lose, which one felt deceived, which one had tied his identity, not just his money, to her attention. Because when relationships are built on illusion, the moment the illusion cracks can be more dangerous than open hostility. Somewhere between affection and transaction, between loneliness and ambition, Hu Yuduan had built a delicate balance. And on the morning of May the 16th, that balance collapsed. At this stage of the investigation, detectives did not yet know how, but they knew one thing with certainty. Whoever killed her likely knew her well enough to be invited inside. When a body is found inside a private apartment, investigators begin with proximity. Who had access? Who had reason? Who had been seen entering and leaving? In Hu Yuduan's case, the list was not short. The first name that surfaced repeatedly in neighbor interviews was the older man, the one in his 60s who had argued with her months earlier in the hallway. Witnesses remembered raised voices, accusations about money, anger about divided attention. He had the demeanor of someone accustomed to being obeyed, financially capable, emotionally invested, publicly humiliated. On paper, he fit the early profile. Police brought him in for questioning. He admitted to a relationship that involved regular financial support. He did not deny jealousy, but he insisted their involvement had ended before mid-May. He claimed he had not visited her apartment in the days leading up to her disappearance. His phone data was examined. His movements were cross-checked. His fingerprints were taken. No immediate inconsistencies surfaced. And crucially, his prints did not match anything recovered from the scene. Still, he was not cleared entirely. Not yet. Next came the rotating cast of other men found in her phone records. Some had sent money, others had arranged meetings, a few had expressed frustration in text messages about being ignored. But frustration is not homicide. Each was interviewed. Each denied recent contact around the estimated date of death. Each provided partial alibis, work schedules, digital footprints, witnesses who could account for at least portions of their time. None admitted to being in the apartment on May 16th. Meanwhile, the investigation faced an unexpected obstacle. The apartment had not been preserved in its original state. For over 3 months, people had entered and exited that space. The landlady had inspected it. A property agent had shown it to potential renters. A cleaning worker had wiped surfaces when a strange odor was reported. And most significantly, a new tenant had lived there, sleeping, cooking, opening windows, rearranging minor items. The crime scene was no longer a sealed moment in time. It was layered with contamination. Officers turned to surveillance footage from the residential complex, but the system stored recordings for only 3 months. By the time the body was discovered on August 30th, footage from mid-May had already been overwritten. The critical window, May 13th to May 19th, was gone. For investigators, this was more than inconvenience. It was strategic loss. No visual confirmation of who entered the building that morning, no timestamps of departure, no vehicle records in the immediate vicinity. The case risked drifting into uncertainty. Attention shifted inward again, to the apartment itself. Forensic teams revisited every surface: door handles, light switches, kitchen counters, wardrobe panels. But repeated cleaning had erased most obvious traces. The absence of visible chaos suggested the confrontation had been sudden and contained. There were no large-scale signs of struggle, no shattered furniture, no overturned appliances. This suggested familiarity. She had likely opened the door willingly. Investigators re-interviewed the new tenant, the 24-year-old woman who had unknowingly slept beside the hidden body for weeks. She insisted the wardrobe was already sealed when she moved in. The property agent told her not to open it. When she complained about occasional odor, a cleaning worker had been sent. No one had removed the tape. Her fingerprints were collected. They did not match any recovered trace evidence either. The cleaning worker was interviewed next. He admitted to wiping surfaces but denied opening the wardrobe. His prints were also taken. No match. The landlady's prints? No match. The older sponsor's prints? No match. One by one, the obvious suspects were narrowing, not because they were proven innocent beyond doubt, but because physical evidence did not directly connect them to the act of concealment, and concealment was key. This was not a case of someone fleeing in panic. The body had been wrapped carefully in plastic bags, bound tightly, placed deliberately inside a wardrobe cavity. Tape had been pressed along the seams to reduce odor leakage. That required time. Time inside the apartment after death, which meant the killer felt safe enough to remain. Investigators began forming a behavioral profile. The perpetrator likely knew the layout of the apartment, had access to kitchen tools, felt confident there would be no immediate interruption, understood the building's surveillance limitations, or was fortunate enough not to be recorded. And perhaps most telling, the perpetrator believed the disappearance would not trigger immediate alarm. That implied familiarity not only with the victim, but with her social environment. Someone who understood that she could vanish for days without raising immediate concern. At this stage, the case felt close, yet intangible. There were many emotional motives, several plausible jealous partners, multiple men with wounded pride, but no forensic anchor, until a re-examination of the kitchen produced something small, almost insignificant at first glance. A roll of transparent tape, unused length still wrapped around the core, placed casually in a corner. It could have belonged to anyone, but when processed under laboratory conditions, something unusual appeared. On the adhesive side of the tape, where fingerprints rarely survive intact, a clear ridge pattern remained. And when that print was compared against those already collected from the known circle around Hu Yuduan, it did not belong to any of them. For the first time since the body was discovered, the investigation shifted from a wide net of suspicion to a single unidentified individual. A fingerprint without a face, a presence inside the apartment that no one had mentioned, and somewhere in a national database, if that print had been recorded before, a name might be waiting. The question now was simple. Had the killer ever been arrested for anything else? In many investigations, breakthroughs do not arrive dramatically. They arrive quietly, as data. The transparent tape roll recovered from the kitchen had seemed ordinary. It was the same kind used to seal packages or wrap household items. But this particular roll had one detail investigators could not ignore. The adhesive surface still held a partial fingerprint. Finding a usable print on the sticky side of tape is rare. The texture distorts ridge detail. Pressure smears patterns. But in this case, the impression was unusually clear, as if someone had pressed a bare finger directly against the exposed adhesive before sealing it down. That detail mattered, because whoever applied the tape to the wardrobe seams had likely handled the roll repeatedly. The body had been wrapped in layers of plastic and secured tightly. The wardrobe doors had been sealed methodically along each crack to contain odor. This was not a single strip pulled in haste. It required several applications, time, pressure, repetition, which meant opportunity for trace evidence. The fingerprint was photographed, lifted, and entered into the national database. If it belonged to someone without prior record, the result would return empty. The case would stall again. But if the individual had ever been processed before, arrested, fingerprinted, documented, then the system might recognize it. Investigators waited. The response came back within hours. Match found. The print belonged to a man named Wang Han, male, approximately 30 years old, registered in Dalian, Liaoning province. Prior conviction for fraud in 2013. His fingerprints had been archived at that time. That past mistake, unrelated to violence, had now resurfaced in a homicide investigation hundreds of kilometers away. The name had not appeared in the initial suspect list, which meant one of two things. Either he had not been mentioned by witnesses, or he had been mentioned, but not recognized as significant. Officers printed his photograph and returned to the bar where Hu Yuduan had worked. When the image was shown to one of her close colleagues, recognition was immediate. "Yes," she said, "that's her boyfriend." Not one of the older sponsors, not a passing customer, but the man she had referred to as her official boyfriend. According to co-workers, Wang Han was younger than many of the other men in her life. He appeared attentive, serious, less flamboyant than the wealthier patrons. He visited regularly, sometimes waited for her after work, and then something else aligned. After mid-May, the estimated time of Hu Yuduan's death, he stopped appearing at the bar entirely. No explanation, no inquiries about her absence. He disappeared when she did. That behavioral silence became as loud as the fingerprint match. If he truly believed he was her committed partner, why did he not search for her? Why did he not question co-workers? Why did he not contact police when her phone went dark? Investigators pulled his phone records. Contact frequency between him and Hu Yuduan had been high in early May. Then abruptly, nothing. No outgoing attempts after May 16th. That date now carried weight, but locating Wang Han proved difficult. He was not at his registered residence. His phone number was inactive. No formal employment records tied him to a company in Suzhou. He had dissolved from routine life, yet people do not vanish without resources. Reviewing his background revealed a detail investigators considered significant. He had training and experience as a chef, which meant he possessed a practical skill set transferable anywhere. Restaurants, hotels, roadside eateries, all potential employment. If he was hiding, he would still need income. A regional alert was issued. His photo circulated quietly among restaurant owners and hospitality managers across surrounding areas. Days passed. Then a call came in. A restaurant owner on the outskirts of the city reported that one of his recently hired kitchen staff resembled the man in the notice. The employee kept to himself, lived in staff quarters upstairs, rarely socialized. Officers in plain clothes visited the restaurant posing as customers. They observed the man in the kitchen. Same build, same facial structure, same regional accent. No doubt remained. On November 10th, 2017, just before 5 p.m., Wang Han was detained in the back of the restaurant kitchen. There was no attempt to flee, no dramatic resistance. He removed his apron as officers approached. The arrest did not answer every question, but it confirmed one thing with precision. The fingerprint inside the apartment had not been random. It belonged to someone intimately connected to the victim. And now the investigation moved from identifying a suspect to understanding motive. Because fingerprints explain presence. They do not explain intent. In the interrogation room, under neutral white light, Wang Han would soon be asked a question that would determine the psychological center of this case. What happened on the morning of May 16th? And more importantly, why did you stay long enough to seal the wardrobe? When Wang Han sat down in the interrogation room, he did not initially look like someone capable of sustained violence. He looked tired, 30 years old, thin, controlled posture, eyes that avoided prolonged contact but did not dart nervously. There was no theatrical denial, no immediate outburst, just hesitation. The fingerprint evidence was placed before him early, not aggressively, simply as fact. A print recovered from the adhesive side of the tape used to seal the wardrobe, matched to his prior record. Presence inside the apartment on the day of concealment was no longer disputable. Silence stretched. Then he began to speak. He said he met Hu Yuduan in early 2016 at the bar where she worked. At first, he was just another customer, but he came back, repeatedly, not because of alcohol, he claimed, but because of her. He described her as soft-spoken, considerate, different from others. Over time, their interactions shifted outside the bar. Meals together, private conversations, shared taxi rides. He told investigators he believed their relationship was genuine. He rented nicer cars than he could afford to drive her around the city. He paid for dinners beyond his means. He transferred her money monthly, around 3,000 RMB, a substantial portion of his salary as a chef. He wanted to appear stable, capable, worth choosing. But he knew there were other men. He said he tried to ignore it, told himself she would eventually commit fully. That once he proved himself financially reliable, emotionally patient, she would settle. That belief became fragile. Phone notifications he was not allowed to see, sudden cancellations, stories that did not align. Jealousy accumulated slowly, not explosive, not dramatic, just constant. Investigators noted something important in his tone. Humiliation weighed heavier than betrayal. On the morning of May 16, 2017, he went to her apartment around 8 a.m. They had breakfast together. At first, he said, the conversation was normal. Then he raised the topic of their future, living together, plans, stability. The discussion shifted to money. She criticized his income, compared him indirectly to wealthier men, questioned whether he could provide enough. Then she revealed something he said he did not know. She was married, not separated formally, not divorced, married. To him, that revelation reframed everything. He had believed himself to be building toward exclusivity, toward legitimacy. Instead, he felt reduced to an option, a financial stream among others. According to his statement, she told him that relationships were practical, that emotion was secondary, that if he could not meet her financial expectations, he should accept it and leave. Whether her words were exactly as he remembered cannot be verified, but perception is often more powerful than accuracy. In that moment, he described feeling cornered, not physically, but psychologically. Months of financial strain, jealous tension, self-image constructed through borrowed symbols of success, all collapsing at once. He stood up from the table, walked into the kitchen. The knife he picked up was already there, a household blade. He returned. The attack was brief. 3 strikes, 2 to the neck, 1 to the chest. Forensic analysis later confirmed the injuries were decisive. Rapid blood loss, minimal prolonged struggle. Afterward, the apartment fell silent. Here, the narrative could have ended as a moment of uncontrolled rage. But it did not, because what followed was not impulsive. He did not call for help. He did not sit in shock. He did not immediately flee. He began to organize. He retrieved plastic bags from within the apartment, wrapped her body, bound it tightly with tape, pulled blankets around it to compress the shape, dragged the body to the wardrobe. He placed it upright inside the hollow cavity. Then he collected the breakfast dishes. He washed them. That detail unsettled investigators more than the attack itself. Washing dishes implies transition from chaos back to order. He sealed the wardrobe doors carefully with strips of white tape along every seam. He turned off her phone and placed it inside with her. He surveyed the room for visible traces. He later stated that disposing of the body elsewhere felt riskier. Surveillance cameras in public areas could capture movement. Keeping the body inside the apartment seemed, in his reasoning, less detectable. That calculation required cognitive clarity. This was not blind panic. It was damage control. Investigators asked whether he had planned violence before that morning. He insisted he had not. The knife was opportunistic, the argument spontaneous. But planning is not always premeditated in days. Sometimes it unfolds in minutes, once a person crosses a psychological threshold. The more revealing element was not the stabbing, it was the entitlement beneath it. Throughout questioning, Wang Han returned repeatedly to themes of effort and fairness. I gave her everything. I tried to be enough. She lied to me. His framing positioned himself as the injured party. The violence in his narrative was an eruption of accumulated injustice. But investigators saw a different pattern: possessive attachment, financial overinvestment tied to identity, fragile self-worth dependent on exclusivity. When exclusivity dissolved, the collapse was not sadness. It was ego fracture. The wardrobe concealment then became symbolic. He could not undo what had happened, but he could hide it, seal it, delay the consequences. For over 3 months, the concealment held, until one overlooked fingerprint, pressed unknowingly into adhesive, became the fragment that unraveled everything. By the time he finished his confession, the motive no longer felt mysterious. It felt tragically familiar, not a calculated assassination, not a long-term scheme, but a man who confused financial sacrifice with ownership. And when ownership proved illusory, he chose control in its most irreversible form. The morning of May 16th did not begin as a murder scene. It began as a conversation about money and commitment, and ended with tape sealing a wardrobe shut, as if silence could preserve pride. The trial took place on December 24, 2018, at the Intermediate People's Court in Shangrao. There was no dramatic courtroom spectacle, no explosive new evidence. By that point, the facts were structurally intact. Wang Han had been inside the apartment. His fingerprint was found on the adhesive used to seal the wardrobe. He had disappeared the same day Hu Yuduan vanished, he confessed. The prosecution focused not only on the act of killing, but on what followed. They emphasized the concealment, the deliberate wrapping, the methodical sealing of the wardrobe, the decision not to seek medical assistance, the attempt to delay discovery. These were not actions of someone in prolonged shock. They were actions of someone making choices. The defense did not deny responsibility. Instead, they framed the killing as an impulsive act triggered by emotional provocation, a sudden psychological collapse after discovering deception. They argued no weapon was brought to the scene. No pre-planned strategy existed. The confrontation escalated rapidly. He confessed without extended resistance, but the court's reasoning extended beyond the moment of violence. In its judgment, it noted that although the argument may have been spontaneous, the post-crime conduct demonstrated conscious intent to conceal a homicide. The wrapping of the body and sealing of the wardrobe required time, awareness, and effort. Time enough to reconsider, time enough to stop. On December 24, 2018, the court sentenced Wang Han to death with a 2-year reprieve. In China's legal system, this sentence carries layered meaning. During the 2-year suspension period, if the inmate does not commit further serious violations, the penalty is typically commuted to life imprisonment or a long-term fixed sentence. Legally, the case was closed, but psychologically, it left questions that extend beyond one apartment in Suzhou. Hu Yuduan was 29 years old. She lived between identities, wife in one province, independent woman in another. She navigated a nightlife economy where affection and financial support blurred into one another. She maintained multiple relationships that operated on partial truths. Wang Han was 30. He constructed an image of success he could not afford. He equated financial sacrifice with emotional entitlement. He tolerated jealousy as long as he believed exclusivity was possible. When exclusivity collapsed, so did his restraint. The case is often remembered for its physical detail. A body hidden inside a wardrobe for more than 100 days. A new tenant sleeping less than a meter away. A sealed door holding silence through an entire summer. But the more unsettling aspect may be simpler. No one reported her missing immediately. Not the men who claimed affection, not the co-workers who saw her nightly, not the partner who believed he loved her. Urban life can absorb absence easily. People relocate, change jobs, block phone numbers, disappear socially without triggering alarm. That assumption created the space in which concealment succeeded, and yet the case nearly went cold. The apartment had been cleaned multiple times. Surveillance footage from May had been overwritten. Witness accounts were fragmented. The only physical link between the crime and the killer was a single fingerprint left on adhesive. If Wang Han had never been fingerprinted in 2013 for fraud, the database would have returned no match. No prior record, no identification. The investigation might have drifted into permanent uncertainty. Instead, one overlooked ridge pattern preserved in glue carried enough detail to restore sequence, motive, and accountability. After sentencing, public discussion centered briefly on the brutality of concealment. But over time, the case faded from headlines. What remains are quieter reflections. How easily financial imbalance can distort intimacy. How pride can harden into possession. How humiliation can escalate faster than reason. And perhaps the most uncomfortable question, was this truly a momentary loss of control, Or was it the predictable outcome of a relationship built on illusion, where affection was measured in transfers and worth was measured in comparison? Hu Yuduan's life ended in a room no larger than 40 square meters. Wang Han's life narrowed to the dimensions of a prison cell. Between them stood a breakfast conversation about money and loyalty. Nothing about that morning suggested it would become fatal, which is what makes it unsettling. Because sometimes the most irreversible decisions begin as ordinary arguments, in ordinary rooms. Behind doors, no one thinks to open.